Before I dive into today's video, I want to take a moment just to thank everybody for their show of support. My last video that I did outside of my big album roundup was the Genesis Gender Fluid video. If you haven't seen it, it's right up there, where I talk about two and a half. I touch upon some other tracks here and there, but really dive deep into two Genesis tracks that are playing with gender a little bit, and showing how that's influenced my own gender fluidity and how I'm gender fluid, and the amount of support and the amount of, I guess, love through that was just outstanding. And I can't thank you all from the bottom of my heart. I was very hesitant to make that video for reasons, because I haven't been completely supported by individuals when I come out as being gender fluid. So I did not receive a single negative comment from that video. Not a single one. It was all extremely supportive, extremely loving. And it really moved me because, like, I was so scared that I would be shown the same kind of hostility that I've experienced when I've talked about my gender. And the fact that everybody was just so supportive and so, like, here for that. Yeah, man, that's great. That hit me. So thank you all so much from the bottom of my heart. That was real good. That was real good. So yeah, let's dive into the meat and potatoes of this particular video. I'm going to try to spearhead this as easily as I can, because very quickly this can go off the rails. So this was a little bit inspired by my buddy Ian from Rhyme Signatures. I'll link that video up there, where he was talking about how vinyl and vinyl collecting has gotten just so expensive recently. And I want to echo that, and I want to continue this kind of conversation, because at the end of the day, things aren't going to change unless we change. And I don't want to make this as like a big rallying cry. I don't want to have that at all, but I do want this to be a little bit of a maybe not even a thought exercise, but like, this is my own 2 cents, and this is what I've been doing. So on the one hand, this is going to be a chronicle of how I have approached record collecting and how I have been doing that, as well as how I've changed my behavior moving forward because of the changes of the market and the changes of the vinyl community itself. Record collecting is a massive hobby of mine. I have spent tens of thousands of dollars in vinyl collecting. And, when growing up, my main way of listening to music was listening to my dad's records on the turntable. When I had my first cassette tape, I would legitimately record vinyl records onto tape cassettes so I could continue to listen to them. And it was in and around like the 2010, in my mind, was kind of like the turning point. Because prior to that, my main way of getting new records, or I guess records in general, was the independent record stores. Growing up in a city about an hour north of Toronto, there was one record store in the city, and I would get used records. Those would be like the records from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So that's how I maintained my own record collection. And then, like, once in a blue moon, you would get a record at a record store, and it would only be at, like, in Toronto. I remember picking up Opeth's Watershed in 2008 on vinyl, and I was floored. Like, getting a new release on a record was just so novel to me. I did the same thing with Neon Bible by Arcade Fire, going down to Toronto and picking that up. Same with Deliverance from Opeth. In and around 2010, we started to get a lot more of those records readily available in record stores, and that's where I found Take Care from Explosions in the Sky. I very vividly remember picking that up in physical format on a record. Same with Mogwai's record, Hardcore Will Never Die, But You Will. I think that's the one. And just being so floored that I could pick up new releases on record. And since then, it's just been an explosion. It's hard not to find a new release on record unless you're like really independent. But even then, through Bandcamp, you can usually pick those up. But because they've been so available and so readily accessible, prices have really begun to skyrocket. Like, when they first came out, they were averaging around $20. $20 would get you a new release and a digital download code or a CD with the album itself. Now, it's not that anymore. The prices fluctuate so incredibly much, like they're all over the place. I used to be able to go down to Toronto, plunk down about, $200 and walk out with a good 10 records. Now I plunk down $200 and I'm getting like 3 or 4. So yeah. And a big part of that is just commerce, supply and demand. If people are willing to spend $60 or $70 on a record companies will charge $60 or $70. And so just because through my own feasibility, my own budget, I can't afford a record that's over $50. So my own limit now is about $50. If a record is over $50 Canadian, I won't purchase it. Straight up, I won't purchase it. Unless it's a box set. Unless it's a special edition that comes with extra features. Unless it's something more than just the record itself, I won't buy a record that's over $50. And that window is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Like, I remember when I spent $80 on Mars Volta's first record, I was just like, well, I've never seen this, and I haven't seen another one. It was the only record I've seen before or since. I felt okay spending $80 on that because of the exclusivity of it. But now, I don't know if I would. Because every other record is around that price. Like, one of my favorite records from last year was Avenged Sevenfold's Life is But a Dream. And I have not been able to find a copy of that under $60 Canadian, which is ridiculous. Like, all my other records that I was able to buy last year, which again, smaller than they have been in previous years, have all been under that $50 range. A lot of them are probably floating around the $40 to $45. Every once in a while, I'll get lucky and I'll find a record that is like $20. And like, I will almost buy a record that I haven't heard before if it's around $20. I'm okay investing $20 on an album I haven't heard. But if an album is $35, I have to know that I'm going to enjoy it. So I need to know, like, I would have had to listen to it first. Which wasn't the case when I was buying CDs or tapes when I was a kid. CDs were $10, tapes were $5. So I didn't mind picking up like The Raging Silence from Uriah Heep for $5 because it's only $5. I can spend $5 on that. And this was $5 in like the mid 90s. So yeah, like the last two Taylor's versions of Taylor Swift's release, 1989 and Speak Now, I haven't picked up because both of them are in the $60 range. So, okay, that's where we currently find ourselves in. And because of that, I'm only buying maybe 1 or 2 records a month. Because those are the only records I can afford, So, where do we go from here? I really see 2 paths ahead. And one's more likely than the other. The first path ahead is it continues the way that it's going. Record prices continue to increase and people are getting pushed out of the casual record collecting hobby. You won't have those individuals that are like, oh yeah, I only have, $100 a month to spend on this. Heck, I only have $50 a month. Well, guess what? You can only afford half a record at that point. So all those people are going to be pushed out of the casual hobby. And it will be exclusively for those with a higher income, those that like this is their main hobby and this is where they spend their income in. And I feel as if that is a massive shame because you are losing a massive audience, a massive customer base, and bands aren't going to be able to retain their fan base as much because, well, they're not making money off of them. Even if you're selling like one $50 record or 20 $10 records, you're going to make more money off of those $20 records than you are of that single $50 record. So yeah, I think that is the one way forward. The other way forward is if we really become strategic in our record buying tendencies. And this was something that Ian rightfully called out in like, are we buying records to listen to them, or are we buying records to display and to have? You know, it kind of reminds me of action figure collections where they're still in the box and they're still on display and like nobody's really playing with them. They're just like there in the box. And if that's how you collect, have at her. That is perfectly valid. I'm not criticizing that at all. But in my mind, records are to be played. Unless you're buying like a exclusive special edition that has a picture disc on it or something like that and you're putting it on your walls, that's one thing. But when it's every album, you know, like I understand I've got my collection behind me because I'm quite proud of my collection. But I am more proud of just sitting down and listening and enjoying the records than I am of showing them off. I think if we really approach this as a means of enjoyment of listening rather than a means of enjoyment through having, I think that will really shift the way that we listen to and purchase records. And I think that's also going to change how we go about purchasing records as well. Like, I really don't purchase records all that often through Amazon anymore. I just don't. I will purchase records either through the independent record stores or through Bandcamp on a Bandcamp Friday. Like this current record store day, I didn't partake in it because I knew I wasn't going to be able to afford half of the records, so I didn't participate. And that's money out of that store as well as the industry's pocket, because I would religiously take part in record store day. You know, like I would take the day off work because of that. And I haven't participated in the last 2 or 3 because I haven't been able to afford it. So, you know, I've had to become a lot more strategic. I am not pre-ordering records now because I haven't listened to the record. And even though I've listened to all the records that I've had in my collection, if I don't know if I'm going to like this record or not, I will hold off, listen to the record, and then purchase it, rather than just clicking that pre-order. Now, I say that, but then I'm like, wait, I did pre-order the new Decemberist album, and I did back the Mariana Sakima record as well. But so, you know, I'm a little calling myself out in that sense. But like the big bands, like I didn't pre-order, I don't plan to pre-order the new Dream Theater record. I don't plan to pre-order a lot of those like other big acts that I love, just because I don't know if I'm going to like it. Like, I used to religiously collect all of the artists' albums, you know, like I have all of Opeth's records. I have all of Porcupine Tree's records. The last 2, 3 Steven Wilson records I haven't picked up because I haven't enjoyed them enough to have them in physical format. That is how I'm approaching this now. I'm only buying records now if they're under $50 and I really, really enjoy it, or if it's a box set or a special edition that comes with quite enough money, like quite enough material that justifies it for its price. And I think that's what we have to do moving forward. Otherwise, we're all going to get bought out of it. Like, we're all going to be pushed out of it unless you're making 6 figures and that is your main source of collecting. So that's kind of where I'm at now. In fact, I've been listening and purchasing more albums on CD and cassette tapes than I ever have before because I'm not able to afford the record. So, like, I purchased this year 3 or 4 cassette tapes because they're like $10. And I can spend $10. I have a tape player. I enjoy listening to tapes because my car has a CD player, and that's how I listen to music when I'm in the car, is through the CD player. I've purchased, you know, about 10 CDs this year, which is more than I've bought in the last 10 years. So I think once again, we're starting to shift back into CDs and back into cassette tapes because that's what's affordable. You know, I haven't seen a cassette tape that's over $20. I haven't seen a CD that was over $30, unless it's a box set or something like that. So I really think it's one of those things where something needs to change before it gets worse. And unfortunately, I can only see it getting worse because we're humans, right? We want the ooh shiny. So yeah, that's kind of my own thoughts. That's where I'm coming to at the table at this moment. Yeah, and I just wish that record sellers would know we can't afford these kinds of things, you know, and yet we still shell out the money for it. So Yeah. So there's my thoughts. That's kind of a little bit of a ramble. I really hope things are going to change, but I know they're probably not. But I want to know what you guys are thinking about this. Have you guys shifted your own record buying, you know, within the past couple of years? I know I have. This year I have bought, I think, a total of, like, we're coming into May. I'm filming this on April 30th. So we're coming into May and I've bought maybe 5 records, maybe 6 records. And like at this point, coming into the 5th month, I would have already had at least 10. So yeah, I've cut my record buying in half just within that schematics. But yeah, I want to know, have your record buying changed just within this past year? Do you expect to have your record buying change within the next little bit? How do you see this going forward and stuff like that? I would really like to hear all about that. Have you switched like I have to tapes and CDs? Yeah, let me know all about that by commenting down below. I'm really interested to hear your own takes about this. And that's where I'm going to stop it. That's where I'm going to hold off. So yeah, thank you all once again so much for watching. You guys are always the best. And until next time, notes out.